Hi, my name is Roy Collin and welcome to the show. I've also got five podcasts: The Awakening Podcast, exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions; the Crypto Podcast, talking about all things blockchain, NFTs, crypto; the Meditation Podcast, talking about all different types of meditation, but there's also meditations there from 1 minute to 2 hours. And the other one's the Learn Polish Podcast. So if you're interested in learning Polish, you can do that. And the other one is Speaking with Roy Collin. And I just have guests from around the world talking about either public speaking or also about their book or just general life in general. And you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. I'm also a podcasting coach. And you see the QR code there, and it's also on my link as well. And if you're interested in actually going on some podcast shows, I'm helping people doing that. Or if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, DanielPacker.com. He helps people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. So be sure to check him out, DanielPacker.com. I hope you enjoy this week's show. Welcome to the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. We're on BitChute, YouTube, and Rumble. And my guest, Peter Wilson, is back again. He was on episode number 148, 153, 182, 261. And they're very popular episodes, Peter. People like what you've got to say. I mean, they can go in ex-Royal, Navy gunner, armourer, professional fighter, gym owner. They can go in and find a bit more about you on that. But I think those seasoned listeners, I suppose the best thing is let us know what's new with you.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just still plodding along, trying to help as many people as possible, still keeping involved. We've actually been looking at a lot more along the debt side of things for people, because that's just blowing out of this world now, with the problems that have been built up since 2020, since they just got rid of loads of businesses, closed businesses down. The effects of that are just still running on. Now, obviously, when we look at the debt side, you have two complementary fields. Let's put it that way. Yeah, complementary. A little bit like the complementary medicine, rather than saying, we can cure things without going down the pharmaceutical route. Be complementary about it rather than try to go against them, because it'll just shut you down.
Exactly.
But you have a lot of people that they'll use what I would call, and I don't mean anything sort of rude by it, like an outdated, old-fashioned system. They call the three-letter process. I've actually seen that mentioned quite a bit over the last couple of months. Now, the three-letter process that they're talking about came out of the United States many years ago, and it was on how to actually close down unsecured debt. Right, we're only talking about unsecured debt here, not unpaid utility bills, and not mortgages. So you're looking at bank loans and credit cards, that type of thing. These are actually quite easy to fight. Now, back in the day, we had a guy, well, there was a guy from the United States who's called Tom Schaff. I think that's spelled Schauf. Okay, but people should go and check him out. He actually had an ebook called something like Top Secret Banker's Manual, and was giving away all of the secrets about banking and the actual scam of it all, on how credit was created. And now you've got following on from there, a German guy called Professor Richard Werner, and he does a lot of good interviews and books and things like that, and he explains about how banking works. And it's not just the exchange that they're supposed to do. It's way dirtier than that. So this is the information that everyone's been working with. So if we go back to the Secret Banker's Manual and the three-letter process that came out of the United States, basically what was really pointed out to everyone is that banks do not lend money. And this is a fact. So if you look at any banking, even the Bank of England, the ex-governors of the Bank of England, and they'll explain it. And there's even documents you can get from the Bank of England that will explain how credit is created via you actually requesting or applying for a loan. And they'll explain it. So it's not conspiracy theory. It's actually on the Bank of England's own documents. They explain how the credit system works and how the credit system actually runs the actual marketplace. So, but if you actually speak to people that are less than aware of what's going on, they look at you as if you've got two heads and that you're stupid, and they go, oh, don't ridiculous, of course the banks lend money, don't be stupid, I've seen it in my bank account, them type of comments. But it's easily and well documented, easily researched by anybody that will put the time in, that what happens is the banks have special licenses for doing many things. But one of them is when you go in and you apply for a loan, it is actually the same with mortgages, okay? But the cream is the mortgages, so they'll go after you with everything if you try and challenge a mortgage. But on the unsecured side, what happens, just say, for instance, you go in, you apply for a bank loan, say, I want £10,000, they'll give you the documentation, although most of it's now done online, but the electronic signature has the same power as you actually wet ink signing a document as well. So, just so we clear that up straight away. So once you've gone in, either electronically signed or put your pen to the paper, and you've provided them with a signature, what happens is they'll take away that application, and generally they'll say, right, well, we'll have the assessment, you'll probably see what happens, the results tomorrow. What they do, right, and I think the banking staff probably have no idea. They're just like, okay, I'm going to go and stick this to my manager, fine, everything's good. They'll convert that, what you believe to be an application form, into a promissory note, into a security instrument. Now, what does that mean? A promissory note is basically like a check. Now, if you're old enough to have had a checkbook at any time, and you would have to write the check out, you would have to write it in what they call a sum certain. Now, what that means is you'll write the first line generally in letters. So you will write it out 10, TEN, 1,000, THOU, etc., etc. You'll write it out properly, £10,000. Then underneath, then you would actually put only and cross the rest out. And in the little box over on the right hand side, you'll actually put the figures with the numerical sign saying £10,000. That is what they call a sum certain in banking. So you've got it written out and you've got it numerically corrected on the other side. That, then you sign it, right? That, if you imagine an application, what you believe to be an application, you've just written out a check. You've got it written in a sum certain, there's the words saying £10,000. You've got it written in a box saying numerically £10,000, and you've signed it. So then they take that away, convert it into a promissory note or a security instrument or a check, whichever way you want to call it, and they deposit it in their own account as you giving them money. You are literally, you've created money, right? Let's call it money, but fiat currency. So you've created the credit. So if you didn't sign it, that £10,000 literally wouldn't exist. By you signing it and giving them that security instrument, £10,000 out of thin air has actually been created magically with this sleight of hand, that they've created that credit, and then they do a little few buttons on the computer, and the next thing is you see it numerically written on your account. So it appears that you have actually borrowed money from the bank, but and it's like doing an audit. They would show that funds was never there before you entered your promissory note. It can't be traced back to where it was actually created, apart from when you did the form. So they can't show or prove that they actually loaned you money. So this is where the premise came from. Well, we can now challenge the banks. How can you say that we owe this money if you can't prove it? And they couldn't prove it. So a lot of these credit card companies were losing their battles then. So once the people had stopped paying, what happens is, say, for instance, you've got a bank loan or a credit card. If you don't pay, they'll start sending you the reminders and blah, blah, blah. You've got to pay this, you've got to pay that. Maybe a mild threat. They're never really that bad. And then they will say, look, if you don't start paying, we're going to have to pass this on to another agency that will help us set up a payment plan for you. But after 90 days, what the banks have done as well, when you actually sign on the dotted line for your application, not only do they create the credit out of thin air by your promissory note literally creating cash, they also take out an insurance policy against you not repaying it. Repaying, okay? So when the 90 days has passed, they cash in that insurance policy. So if we're talking about the £10,000, we'll just keep that at the pretend sum. They get the £10,000 paid back to them in insurance. They'd never given you anything anyway, so they have no loss. They can't prove a loss, which was the whole thing of when they actually started fighting back with those books like the Secret Banker's Manual, Prove Your Loss. And they couldn't because they had no trace of where the money came from when they gave it to you. So then they've got their money back. Right, well, I haven't got it back. Then now they've got an extra 10,000 in profit, plus whatever you were repaying them initially before you decided you would stop. And then what they do is they sell something onto the debt collection agency as well. Now, they never ever sell the debts. This is a thing, and this is a really big sleight of hand again. They only ever sell the data. Okay. So that again is against GDPR, right? So you know GDPR is quite European wide, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's going against those regulations and also against the DPA. So you know your data protection. So it's breaking both on the actual supplying your private details. They're not allowed to give your private details to anyone. So then what happens? But they will sell, from our research, a £10,000 loan. They'll sell to these companies only the data they're selling for about £200. But to the bank, it's £200 again for nothing. You know, they haven't created or lost anything. So it's all pure profit. So what they do, if they've got your £10,000, you're not paying anymore. So what they'll do is they'll put your data with the data of someone else who's not paying, someone else. So they'll make it up to about 1 million. And they'll pass that on to a debt collection agency on a website. And it's literally like a bidding website, very much like you know, any auction site that you see online. And these credit companies or debt collection agencies will go and put bids in, and they'll get the data there. And they have a huge block of data that they've just bought. So once they have the data, they divide it up into geographical areas, because they usually have a few offices around the country, and then they'll send it off to there, and then their agents will start to do their job, which generally, to start with, will be tons of letters to you, a little bit intimidation, like initially, and getting worse as it progresses. But it's all just about bullying you to make them, or make you believe you owe them money now. So there's two different versions of the debt collection side of it. So when they put their bid in, they are either going to take it and say that they have the deed of assignment, it's been assigned to them, or they'll just say that they're acting as an agency. So there is another split. If they're acting as an agency, what they've generally done is paid even less money for it. So there's less risk. If they've actually gone in and said they have a deed of assignment, they've paid a higher fee. So they're going to put extra pressure on and be more aggressive, because they've got a little bit more to lose if you don't pay, because they have actually paid some money for your alleged loan. And if you go down the side where they have no deed of assignment, so there's a few different companies that will always pay lower money, but they still send out intimidatory letters that make, or let's call it the low-hanging fruit. They know they're going to get the easy pickings, and they make fortunes of profit off people who panic and either make a payment option, so they'll start paying the debt collector agency monthly, or they'll just pay it off in full if they have the spare funds. So these people are raking it in, and they've never ever done anything for it. They haven't given anyone any money. You haven't got a contract with them. You've got no reason why to actually do anything with them at all, but through fear and the programming that everybody has been through their entire life, and all of these TV programs. I mean, I don't watch television, but we know that there's programs called, one of them is called Don't Pay, We'll Take It Away, about like debt collectors and bailiffs. What a lovely program to put into people's faces. And, you know, it's all about programming, intimidation, and making sure that you all be good boys and good girls, do exactly what you're told, and pay up and shut up. So this is what the whole scenario is. This, I think I've just described the whole debt collection agency, like, you know, pay up or shut up and do exactly what you're told. So that's kind of exactly what it is, all through intimidation. Now, the way we handle this side of it, and I'm going to call this lawful. Now, we'll also describe the legal side as well later. But on the lawful side, what we would do if anybody asked for assistance, we would say, okay, we're going to send them off what we call an SAR, a subject access request. Now, this has been a little bit more well known as subject access request since, in the UK anyway, since last year. Nigel Farage, I don't know if he's something to do with politics anyway, but he's got a big mouth and a big following. And he used to be an MEP, so he kind of, like, you know, helped them get kicked out or at least voted out of the EU. So they closed down his bank account at, I think it's called Coots, Coutts. So you've got to be a bit, you know, so like wealthy to get into there anyway. So they kicked him out. Obviously, they didn't like him. And they said, no, it's purely just for financial reasons. So somebody explained to him, because he didn't know, that you could send him an SAR. He didn't even know what it means. So an SAR, subject access request, you're the subject, and you're asking for requesting all of the data that they hold on you, and they are legally obligated to give you all of the data that they hold on you. They have to supply it all. Now, obviously, Nigel Farage, like an MEP or an ex-MEP, and, you know, or big mouth, big following, he's going to get what he wants. So they supplied all of his data, including all of them slagging him off. You know, so he was very easy. It was an easy case for him to prove that they had done whatever wrong, and he got it all sorted out and compensated. But this is the power of an SAR. Now, you've got to make sure that you write it out legally. This is where the whole thing goes astray. Because of the old, outdated three-letter process, it's been repeated and repeated and repeated. And many times people have created their version, then the next version, then the next version. And I've seen an SAR with about 20, 30 questions on. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you're not going to get any answers. They're gonna just bin it and not reply whatsoever. So you only need 2 or 3 questions on. And the question that you're going to send to them, the main one, right, is, well, the 2 ones, it's like either we want to see the actual deed of assignment by the Law of Property Acts, 2 of them, 1989 and 1925. There's 2 separate ones there for miscellaneous provisions in 1989 and the full deed in 1925. And they must supply this by their own statute. We'll call it statute, but they call it law. And they haven't got one because they did not buy the debt. They did not pay a fee to actually exchange and get, because a deed of assignment, what it basically is they would actually swap a deed with the original creditor. So you're going to get a receipt, in other words, for what you've paid for that debt. And they haven't got one because all they did was buy block data. So if they show you the block data, they have to purge, they have to literally incriminate themselves. Oh, by the way, I've bought all this data, which is illegal. So they're never going to do that, but they also cannot supply you with the deed of assignment. But if we're dealing with the ones that are only saying they're an agent, they'll write back and say, no, we haven't got a deed of assignment. It's not applicable to us. We're just acting as an agent. And that's what we want to see. We are just acting as an agent. So immediately we'll send them another lawful notice saying something along the lines of, thank you very much for your confession that you are a third-party interloper on a private matter. You have no contract with us. You have no chosen action, which means it's enforceable at court. Therefore, cease and desist and leave us alone. And I mean, I have hundreds upon hundreds of successful cases doing that. If they're just a third-party interloper, they have no legal standing whatsoever. So you can close them down straight away there. And you know, they might persist for a little while, but now we're actually developing the notices along a different tack of legislation, that if they actually do start writing again after they've been notified, right, to cease and desist, then you can actually put them in for a criminal conviction, or at least a criminal investigation, and move it up and file against them for harassment, as well as many other things on there. So that is how to do things. Let's say on the lawful way, where they have no deed of assignment. If they do have a deed of assignment, they still have to actually supply it to you. So if they actually come back and say, well, what they do is they come back and they say, well, we can't give you that because it's got sensitive information on, right? So they say, well, you know, we can't redact it. We can't give you the information. There's a lot of information on, it doesn't relate to you. And actually, we don't need to give you that. We only need to tell you about the notice of assignment. So the difference between a notice of assignment and a deed of assignment is the deed is a legal document that has to be legally created, right? And it has to be executed as a deed, proper signatures on, proper dates, and proper witnesses. That is how you execute a deed, and that's why it's called a deed of assignment. That obviously never happens because they're just buying the data. So they haven't got it, and they try and tell you that they don't need to actually give you it. The notice of assignment is simply a letter from the bank saying, we've assigned this to debt collector. That is it. But I mean, in reality, that's like, you know, me sending a letter to someone and saying, oh, I've just went and sold your debt to like me mate Bob, and he's going to knock on your door next week. There's no legal like standing in that whatsoever. Now, the way we actually attack it, we never challenge the debt. We don't say you can't prove it. We don't say that's not the right amount. We don't say anything like that. We go head on straight into GDPR and DPA. So when we send the SAR, we still send that, but we're asking those specific questions again. You have to supply us with all data, including the deed of assignment, to show that it's been legally executed, and that's the word, legally executed. When they see that, they know, they might know a little bit about this, right? It's not like, because one of the replies that they do send is, where did you find that on the internet? You know, how rude and arrogant is that? But anyway, so you say it's legally executed deed of assignment under, right, the Law of Property Act Miscellaneous Provisions 1989 and the Law of Property Act 1925. So section 136, which shows they need it signed and witnessed, but they haven't got it, so they will bluff around with it. So what we do is we send a second one. You have, by law, their law, you have to give them 30 days to reply. After 30 days, you have to send a second notice. Now, even if they reply, they have to reply with all of what you've asked for, supplying the data. I mean, I've seen them reply with literally, they must have killed half a tree to write the paper out of all of these accounts, you know, and, you know, or statements that you've had from your credit card company or your loan company, which is just nonsense. You know, you've probably got all the statements yourself at home, right? That means nothing. We haven't got the deed of assignment from them because it doesn't exist, and they haven't got any documents that we've asked for under the Law of Property Act, miscellaneous, or on the 1925. So they're just bluffing. So we send them a second SER saying, you haven't actually supplied the information requested. You are in breach of GDPR and DPA 2018. We'll give you 7 more days to supply the information. And if you don't supply it, what we're going to do is we're going to complain to the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office, and then we're going to start legal proceedings against you. So, you know, and some of these people are so arrogant and they're so busy picking up the low-hanging fruit of everyone who's got terrified and paying them that they generally ignore you because they don't really care about you that much anyway. But what can happen is, after the 7 days, if they still haven't replied with substance, i.e. where is the deed of assignment, then what we do is we actually do file a complaint with the ICO. So you can go onto the ICO website, find the complaints, and then just go step by step, fill it in, right? You can fill it in there. Now, I'm not telling you by any means that the ICO are going to stick up for you or they're going to drone prosecute anyone or anything like that. A lot of cases they've actually come back and says, yes, we agree, they have breached GDPR. And that'll be, in the ICO's eyes, the end of it, right? But to us, that's another bullet that we can put in our magazine. So then we're going to go on and we're going to say, right, now we've got extra proof. So we're going to send them a letter before action. Now you need to send a letter before action because you're coming under like court regulations, protocols. Now we want to do everything now strictly legal, and all we're arguing about is GDPR. We don't care if they say we had the loan. We don't care if they say we haven't paid it. We don't care if they say it's been assigned. They are not supplying us with our data. That is what we're arguing. That is our case. They have breached GDPR. So we don't have to prove about the loan. We don't have to prove they did or didn't have money. That's got nothing to do with it. They've actually breached our data, and they've caused me much distress in doing so. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down that line. So the next thing we do after we've sent them the letter before action, which states you're still in breach, you haven't supplied the data, you've got 7 days there now to supply it, or we're going to move into intent to prosecute. So they can't give you it, obviously. They may like then say, oh, we've passed it back. Sometimes they do that. I've got right up with several companies, and it's getting to the intent to prosecute, telling them, right, we're going to court now. And they've actually pulled out the case and just thrown it all away because they know that they're in trouble. Now, even then, you can still, because I haven't supplied the data, you could still actually go on and file against them. But once we've actually gone past the 7 days from the letter before action, some people may call it a letter before claim, same thing. All you're doing is you're telling them that you're going to start filing proceedings against them. We send them the last chance. It's a last chance saloon. I call it the intent to prosecute notice. So literally say right now, it's 7 days past the letter before action. This is literally your final opportunity to either supply the information. Sometimes some people will say, oh, you can settle out of court for £2,000, £3,000, euros, whatever it is. But you have 7 days and we're going to file. And then after that 7 days, all you have to do is you've got a list of all of your documentation. So you've got the first SER, you've got the proof you sent it through like tracking numbers on the mail system, wherever country you're in. You've got the second one, telling them about the ICO, you're going to complain. You have the ICO complaint, if they've replied or not. Then you have the letter before action and your intent to prosecute. All of that is your paperwork that you are going to put into an affidavit style, not an affidavit, but a style, because we're going to use their paperwork because they like it better. So you list down everything that you've done, everything that they've supplied, and you supply all the copies. Now you can do it online or you can do it in paper. It's better to do it in paper, so I'm told, because they like to see it. And the small claims court, which is what we're doing, they actually like paperwork. So I suppose they're being ecologically friendly, so they want to kill more trees, but whatever. So then you file the N1 with all this, and then N1 in the UK anyway is just a small claims court claim against them. Listen it all in there, put it in. Now, on there, 90% of the time, because it's GDPR, they've got proof that they haven't replied to anything with GDPR compliance. You're saying it's distress and it's harassment. You feel as if you're being hurt by them not doing what they're supposed to, and you're using their legislation, not your rules, not made up, not common law, harm and all that, right? Generally, they'll not even like go and reply to the actual claim, and they'll just actually pay it out. So what happens is when you get your court judgment, you get a county court judgment against the debt collector. How cool is that? But then you're going to pay a small fee to go from the county court, I'm talking about the UK obviously, to move up to the High Court. It's only about £60, depends on how much it is, but you know, let's say it's a £5,000 CCJ, then plus costs, and it's going to move up to the county court, which you can actually claim against them as well for costs. About £60 to £70, you will get a High Court writ against that company, which means that the High Court enforcement officers can literally walk straight in, because it's a commercial office, they can walk straight into their company, demand that money, or shut them down immediately, because it's a High Court writ. And you know, some people may call it a bailiff, but that's like an old-fashioned word. It doesn't mean anything really. A High Court enforcement officer has the power to close the whole company down, and they will take all of the equipment out of their actual office with that High Court writ, which is a court order, a real signed by a judge court order, and that's the power that you actually have. So that's how you actually handle that situation. And we're not fighting against the loan. You have to remember that. We're not trying to prove that we didn't owe anything. We're not going down like the old 3-letter route that's well outdated. We're actually just going to go in with the GDPR and DPA regulations and hammer them down like that, and literally get revenge on these dirty, like, scumbag debt collectors. So that's the way we actually do it. I've just, our presentation that we have in our private members group, that's everything's laid out for them. So they've got all the templates step by step, how to actually run through that whole system. So, and that's what we've been working on a little bit heavier the last couple of months than anything else, really.
No, but brilliant. And with, with the bailiffs, because sometimes they just freeze people's account and whip it out. Doesn't matter that they don't, they can't pay their rent or feed their children. They just kind of decide to just whip it out. What's the kind of laws on that? Like, how are they allowed to get away with doing that, where they're just whipping money from people's accounts?
I mean, obviously what we're only talking about here is unsecured debt. So we're only talking about credit cards and bank loans, that type of debt there, maybe personal finance. So I'm not talking about council tax or unpaid utilities. However, it all comes under the same thing when we're actually talking about the GDPR side. So they are not allowed, without a court order, to close or put any kind of like attachment of earnings is a big one, isn't it? So you're actually got a job, and the next thing your employer is told, deduct this out of the wages and pay it direct to the collector or direct to wherever. So, but you need to have a specific court order to do that. Now, the council, they are terrible at doing that. We've got a lot of people that we speak to now, and they've already got the actual attachment of earnings, and their own employer is deducting it out of the wages to pay the council tax before they've even given them the wages. It's completely illegal. So what you can do is you could then actually go after your own employer, because your own employer is breaching GDPR for starters. So what you have to do, now remember, this is council tax, right? Let's just call it council tax. So, well, actually you could do it with all utilities, but let's start off with council tax. All you have to do is send the SER to your employer, right, to the managing director, and it's the same thing. You're going to ask, you won't ask for the deed of assignment, because that's nothing to do with it there. That's only to do with unsecured debt. But you will ask them for the court paperwork to show the liability order. Well, we know that that doesn't exist. There is no liability orders anymore. They got rid of them in 2003. So they literally have no court paper to say that they're allowed to enforce anything via a bailiff or via the attachment of earnings. Now, I think it was November, December last year, there was a case that just come through in the High Court, and the judge was a Lord Harrison. And when the guy who was called Leighton versus Bristow and Suter, so everybody can check that out, Bristow and Suter being the debt collector. So the guy, Wayne Leighton, he's actually put in a case against the debt collector, not the council. Now, basically what he said was they've got no right to enforce, and they were harassing him, and they had no proof that they were allowed to be talking to him. So he's like, well, where's the court order? So the judge has actually looked at the liability order from the council and went, hang on, this is just a letter from the council. Where's the court order? Well, there isn't one. Where's the court paperwork? There isn't one. Where's the judge's signature? Where's the stamp from the court? There isn't one. It's just council paper saying, oh, we have a liability order. So I don't know that, like, everybody argues about it, and some people try to say, but legislation is the best thing in the world, and we should all be doing this, that, and the next thing. But we know that they completely illegally stamp all of these so-called liability orders. They've never been in front of a judge. They've never been in front of a proper court. They just kangaroo court it all the way through, create all these liability orders and send them out. So he proved it, and he got compensation against Bristow and Suter, not the council. But then the judge says, this is not a court order. It can't be enforced by anybody, and they need to review the system because this is just ridiculous. So they probably will review it, and they probably will go back to court orders, and then it will be a legal system, and they'll have to find another way if you want to argue with it. But if you imagine that now, and it's your employer who's actually took the money out of your earnings before they've given it to you, you're just going to say, please provide proof that they're under the SER, you're legally obligated to reply with all the information, including where's the court order with my details on. Well, we know it hasn't. So then you could go in and not only get your money back from the employer, but you could also sue them because what they've done is have breached GDPR. Okay, so, and they've supplied your details to the council, which they were, again, that is GDPR. So you can sue your own employer if you wanted to go that far, but it's like for many things, harassment and all sorts. So that you can, that's how you can do that. And exactly the same with the bank. So you could just go straight to the bank and say, all right, no problem, right? But now you have to supply me with the court order. Here's an SAR, right? Banks will be well versed in having to deal with SARs. So you'll say, supply all the data you have of me, including the court order from a real court showing that you're allowed to actually take my money out of my account or close my account down. And again, they can't do it. Okay, so then you have like the ability then to sue the actual bank, which would be a delight, wouldn't it? And the thing is, well, what we do know as well through personal experience, if it's the utility companies, they do virtually identical to what the actual councils do. They don't go into court to get a warrant. They call it a warrant and they want to come into the house and they change it to a meter or whatever. There's no warrant whatsoever. So if they try to actually close a bank account or do an attachment of earnings, all you have to do is write to, in the UK anyway, because that's where I did mine in the UK, write to the Ministry of Justice, have the actual number of the so-called warrant, have the name and address and everything, supply it to them and say, SAR on here, I need all the details on that. And obviously the warrants do not exist because the utility companies themselves, in my case, E.ON, they just create them out of thin air, right? They don't get like a proper judge to do them or anything, not even a proper court. It's all just done in a back office and then they pretend that they've got a warrant of entry. So you can actually use that information. It takes a little while. I'm not saying you can get your money back the next day. You know, it is something you're going to have to suffer through and go through, but you can actually get remedy by it by going through on the SAR route, subject access request. It's extremely powerful. GDPR and DPA is a fantastic tool for you to be able to use against these scammers.
Excellent. And, you know, if we look at, say, the mortgage side of things, then, you know, you mentioned about redaction. I remember when I requested the information, half the pages were black. Like, what's the legality of that? Because how can I defend myself or how can I know what's true? Because I know that, like, it was similar to yourself, you know, I mean, I lost everything and it was kind of, they abused me. Credit card companies, the banks, they were ringing me, they were abusing me. I mean, you're down on your knees, you're depressed anyway, without them ringing you every day, abusing you. But when you request the information, it's all blacked out. I mean,
Yeah.
how can I defend myself when they're hiding something? What's the legality there?
See, this is the abuse of it because obviously they are allowed to give if they're going to supply the information. If they really had a deed of assignment, okay, and they had like information on there that was about somebody else, well, they can't give you somebody else's details, so they are allowed to black that out. However, you don't know what they've blacked out, so that's the abuse of it, isn't it? So they can block out whatever it is that they want, and how you would actually get through that to find out, well, you know, like, was any of this applicable to me, or are you actually hiding, you know, like why I shouldn't be paying? But I mean, that is like how they've got the upper hand on that side when it comes to the redaction bit, because they can block out basically anything they want, can't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they are allowed to do that, you know, legally they're allowed to redact information that you shouldn't see. So if there's other people's names and addresses, for instance, anything like that, then they would actually get sued again. So they would have to actually black that out. But, you know, do they abuse that? I bet you they do.
Well, I'm convinced the information was the abuse they were giving me, and it was all written down, and they had to hide it because then you'd have proof of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the only problem on that side of it. So when they are giving you the information, you know, they can basically strip it down so you've got virtually nothing to try and prove your case with. You know, especially on the mortgage side, because like I'm saying, that is their cream, right? So they know that they're dealing in the land, in the properties. So I would never recommend anybody go and challenge the mortgage and say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay my mortgage. I'm going to fight them." You know, it's like, at the end of the day, you've got to have somewhere to live, haven't you? You've got to have a roof over your head. You need protection. You need to have a home. So I wouldn't recommend trying to fight banks on a mortgage front. I'm just like, protect yourself and think of you. Don't just like be selfish about you. What about your family? So if you're going to provide for your wife and children or partner and children, then don't just go and try and be clever about it and take on a bank over a mortgage, because they will literally fight tooth and nail to get that property, because they're going to take it, which they're taking it for free, because the mortgages are created with a promissory note, your signature, exactly the same as a bank loan. They have not loaned any money to you, not even the mortgage money. So everything that you've paid back to them is completely profit to them. And then what they'll do is the security instrument, by the way, be it the loan or the mortgage, once they've actually collected them together, they'll put them together to make another 1,000,000, 2,000,000, whatever, and they'll sell them as security on the securities exchange. So they're making even more profit selling your security instrument again and again. So on the securitization, they call it, there's a couple of people tried to actually fight on the level of securitization and still got nowhere and
I
ended up
actually
losing.
did on my affidavit, because when I was fighting them in the High Court, I was representing myself, because as you know what it's like when you lose everything, you can't be affording, attorneys, barristers, or whatever you call them,
Mhm.
and they could never respond. And I actually had proof that they had securitized all these mortgages together, and also I had proof that they gave a write-off to a billionaire who didn't need it. He got a 300 million write-off from loans, and I still lost. And like when I was in the High Court, it's like, for those that don't know, normally you have a defendant, the plaintiff, and they have their solicitors. But when it's in this case, I don't know, is it the same in the UK? There was like 150. Nobody was turning up. It was just like all the barristers representing the banks, and they just kept. Nobody was winning. Everybody, like, so I saw full corruption with the actual judges. And one of my guests that has been on, he's written two books. Like, he's proved that even one of the banks in Ireland was actually insolvent, and they were still trading. Yet people lost their life savings, and there's people still paying for that today. So, like, I don't know, have you gone down the route of kind of where they claim they're, because to be honest with you, when I saw this, I was like, I lost faith in everything. It's like, these scumbags are ruling this. They're taking people, making them work as we're all slaves. Like, no matter what you think, we're slaves. And to go and witness this, that what I kind of realized is they have to have jurisdiction. So you challenge the jurisdiction to actually get you in the door. And I'm finding that's actually, they don't, because you kind of think they have control over you. And I've started using that, and they back off. I got bailiffs to back off. I've got, courts to back off. And it's like, unless I have something right, I was waiting from the bait the door down. But I know that, like, the reason that I started reading 20 different books on this is I was like, all the corrupt people, like, they're the ones making the money. All these traders, they're all making a fortune when all these banks go down. All the, the EU bailout. In reality, is that should have been for the people. I don't know one person that got money from that, except for the billionaires. It was like all the banks got more money. So, like, have you actually looked on that, or with your team, about the jurisdiction of going into the court?
No, not on the jurisdiction side. I mean, at the end of the day, like if you look at it, the entire system is just, it's not so much like a fraudulent one, but it's all a fictional one. So if we look at the whole creation of money, this is where it's all coming from. It's stemming from. At the end of the day, our controllers, and yet absolutely spot on, we are all slaves. So how can they control the slaves? Well, first of all, they give them the illusion of freedom. So everybody thinks they're free, even though if you try and work out how much tax you're paying, do you feel free, right? But all of the money that they actually create is just all fake. None of it is real, but it's easily how they control you. So a good example of that is just look back a couple of years ago when the truckers in Canada, they're actually getting quite a head of steam, and they were actually having some effect. And they just closed everyone's bank accounts, froze everybody's bank accounts in Canada that was working with the truckers or was a trucker. And even if people had donated £10 or $10 to go and get a sandwich, right, they had their bank accounts frozen, their PayPal accounts frozen. That's how filthy it is. This is how they actually control you, because in the UK you've got, I mean, you know, I just know too, because I've like listened to their story, was a woman called Katie Hopkins, you know, and another guy called Tommy Robertson, totally out of favor with the narrative, and they just went after them and closed everything down. They closed down all of the any jobs that they had, so any presenting jobs that they had, to close it all down, shut down YouTube channels if they were making money out of it, which is they've done to Russell Brand as well. Which I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, these people that are doing the channels, but then it's all about controlling your money, shutting down your bank account where you can't go buy food. I mean, how is that even humane? So now you're going to starve a family, you know, that because you don't agree with them. So, but the money, if we look at it, so it's going back maybe a little bit higher level, but the central banks control everything. It isn't even the governments. The governments do not create money. The governments only borrow money from the central banks. I mean, even when I was a kid, you know, and I was like, you know, sitting there waiting, or maybe it's the TV had just finished for, like, you know, the little kiddies TV. Back in the day, we only had 3 channels, and that was it, you know, and it didn't start till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it went off at 10 at night, right? But you would have your kiddies TV, and then the news would be on, so you'd be like, oh God, the news. And then I hear them talking about a deficit, and I'm thinking the country's deficit, and we're all in debt, and I'm thinking, how can a country have debt? Surely the country is the country. And I could never get it. And then I was asking like adults, and they're like, "Oh, it's just politics," you know. Well, it isn't politics; it's finance. So that, you know, the central banks themselves, what they do is they actually print the money. You don't really print it much nowadays, but you know, even digitally, it's still printing it. And the governments borrow that money from the central banks, which are privately owned for-profit companies. So the countries, right, be it like the United Kingdom, they borrow the money from the central bank, and they pay interest on what they're borrowing. It's not a little good friendly loan. They have to pay interest. So now they've got the entire country taxed. You're all paying tax, and that goes back to the central bank, and it doesn't even clear the interest. It doesn't even pay the interest that's actually been charged on the loan that they started with, which is why the debt goes up, the debt goes up, the debt goes up, and why we're now in a huge deficit, ready to have a financial crash like no one's ever seen before. So all of your tax, all these people that say, well, you know, we need to pay tax because they've got to fix the roads, they've got a hospital, none of your tax goes to that. All of your tax goes back to the central banks, all owned by the Rothschild banking cartel, no matter what country that you live in. Then the countries go and borrow even more money. So the debt goes up again, and the interest is going up again. And you're never, ever, ever going to get away from this Ponzi scheme that is this fake currency, because the currency itself is not backed by anything. It's not backed by, it literally is just a debt note. So it doesn't mean anything. That you can't say, oh, well, you know, this is backed by gold, this is backed by silver, or, you know, since the Americans got rid of the gold standard in 1971, it was decimated completely. They tried to link it to, or they did link it to oil. And now they're saying all of the BRICS nations take the oil away, and they're selling it in rupees, they're selling it in whatever they want to sell it in, instead of the US dollar, because it was called the petrodollar. Right now, that's starting to disintegrate. So you're seeing the power of the US go down. And that is why you're seeing a lot of these wars going on at the minute. It's all about trying to re-grasp the control to stop the US dollar collapsing, which I don't think it will stop it. I think we're on the imminent, we are literally on that cliff edge, ready to drop off of the biggest financial crash in the whole of our lives ever that you've ever seen.
And like, Because I remember, I mean, I found that out a good while ago, and you tell people, yeah, the Bank of Ireland isn't owned by Ireland, or the Bank of Poland isn't owned by Poland, and nobody knows that. That's the sad thing about it. And you mentioned about Canada, because I actually wanted to touch on that today, because like I've got Ukrainian friends, got Russian friends. I'm totally against war, and I've heard now, because they weren't bringing in the younger people because it wouldn't actually look so good. But now they're going to start reducing the age for the conscription for the Ukrainian, and they're going to be freezing their accounts. So they'll be doing the same thing. So, like, if people have moved, because even I've seen letters in Ireland where they were saying, hey, you have to go back. But I know by reading the letters that there's ways of getting out of it, because they're going for the entity as opposed to the human, living soul person. But
Yeah.
it looks like that's their trick. They're going to do the same thing, just whip the money in. Unfortunately, majority of people haven't a clue about this, and they just assume, what can I do?
Yeah, well, I mean that's it. But again, it's like you've got your whole indoctrination and your whole programming that they've put. And this is what we're saying. People are saying, well, they're so clever, then aren't they? If they've been able to indoctrinate literally the planet, and I just say, well, yeah, but we're not talking about like a couple of mates, that were down the pub and decided to come up with this plan. I mean, these are not human. There's an entity way above, like an intelligent entity way above any human interaction that you've got involved here. They are literally controlling it. It reminds me of a film, back in the day, Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And he was trying to go and get the sheep's golden fleece, and it was like ancient Greek times. And they used to go back and show the gods above looking through the clouds and then interfering with what happening with Jason as he was trying to do his job and go off and capture the golden fleece, and the Hydra with all the snakes' heads. But I know that's a silly film, but you just think, now and again they're going to throw you a little bone and say, look, we're interfering. Look at what we're doing. And they control everything from wherever they are, whatever, like, this powerful entity is. It's an intelligent entity that's got nothing to do with humans apart from the interference that it does to control them. So the system has been set up, this legal fiction, okay, and it's complete fiction. And so I always compare it to Harry Potter. So you've got J.K. Rowling. She owns all of the royalties to Harry Potter because she created the fiction. So everything that we're living in is a complete illusion and a fiction. I'm not saying you can't see it, right? I'm not saying that you can't touch your desk and get, hit on the head with a brick, like that type of illusion. But what it is like they've created these legal fictions from your birth certificate. So they've created that certificate that then they've got that legal fiction name, which is full capital name, which is not how you write. You cannot write in English with full capitals. Your name is a proper noun. So like Peter Wilson starts with a capital P, the rest lowercase, capital W, the rest lowercase. You can only have it in full caps if it's a corporation. Well, there's a strange coincidence. So now we've all got these corporations that looks like our name. And this is the indoctrination into the fiction. So they're actually convincing you all the time from birth that you are the legal fiction they talk about. So when you go to school, I think I was 4 when I went to school, went to an infant school, they call it back in the day. So when you go in and they're doing this register thing, which is like the biggest form of indoctrination and black magic you can imagine. So you're sitting in the classroom and there's a teacher and the teacher's looking at you. So why do they have to read the name out? If they're looking at you, they can see you, right? They could just tick the book. Oh, there they are. There he is. All right. So, but what they do is they read out your name. Then you do whatever you do. Yes, miss. Yes, sir. Stick your hand up. Whatever it is, but you acknowledge it. Usually we say yes, miss. Right. Yes, sir. But what they're reading out on that register, register, right? Regis belonging to the crown. They've actually put you under the crown in their Regis book. So then they're reading out that full capital version. It's not your name. It's the full capital corporation they're reading out. It just sounds like your name. But then you say, yes, sir, yes, miss, then it's spelling. It's literally black magic. They're casting a spell over you and you're agreeing that you are that corporation. And you're doing it like 5 days a week for 12 years. and you've registered, you know? And just think of the indoctrination in the school, the education system. Who invented the education system that we're still under now? It was the Rockefellers. And it was actually designed to produce good workers for the factories. Don't think, be a straight line, stand up, sit down, put your hand up when you want something. It's all about being in a factory. And even if you look at the dining room, okay, so you're going into the school, it's dinner time, a bell rings, you got to jump up for your order. Oh, there's the bell, jump up. A little bit like a prison, you know. Then you go down into the dining room and you're all sitting in these rows. It looks just the same as a prison canteen. Okay, think of America, which is like one of the biggest prison states ever. Even the buses that they take the kids to school in are identical to the buses that they take them to prison in. So, you know, they're just making sure we're all going to be compliant little drones that will do exactly what they're told. Stand in line over there, stand in line over there, stand up, sit down, eat when the bell goes, stop eating when the bell goes again, right? You've got 5 minutes to go to the toilet. You're a prisoner and then you're indoctrinated. I mean, I spent most of my time outside of the classroom or getting belted with leather belts on there or getting thrown out of school. So, you know, I didn't fit into the indoctrination camp. And that's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because it's I was an outsider from the very beginning. But that's all it is. It's just pure indoctrination. And that's why you've got so many people now that are totally just living drones that do everything that they're told to. As soon as a government official tells them, cover up and stick a mask on, yes, yes, please, you know, go and get some stabbing in there. Yeah, yeah, no problem, no problem. You know, it's just whatever they're told. Bowing,
With the education system, because I was 4 as well, and I remember that. Put your finger up to your mouth. I mean, how insane is that? Like, you know, and cross your hands for the whole day. And I remember that they were every day they'd call out your name, and like we all knew everybody was in the class, but yet they went around and done it. But what's actually happening now? Obviously, they took out phonetics and they just dumbed down the population. But what they're doing as well is before, like I used to be classed as a did because I was always not kind of complying. You know, I just knew this is wrong. You know, it was a memory system. You had to remember stupid shit. Like it was like poetry. You had to remember a poem, learn 2 poems at night, and write it out. And if you got it wrong, you had to write it out 100. Everything was. It didn't make sense. And I used to be fighting that. I was like, what's going on? But what's happening now is them kids, the ones like nobody should just come in and sit down for 6 to 8 hours. Now the teachers are trained to go, your child is ADD, and they're popping the pills, which are causing so many problems. And unfortunately, the parents, and shame on them, they're actually listening to dumb teachers that they're not qualified to actually do that. And they're hurting their own children thinking they're helping them. And I've even had kids on, a guy, I know what age he was, about 20, but he was on it since he was about 10. And the amount of side effects that he's got from that. And there's millions of people, especially in the States, but it's going across the pond. They're doing it everywhere now. They're doing it in Ireland and the UK as well. And like it's for over 100 years, the education system is just destroyed. And yet people just like we're slaves. We've been brainwashed to get into the system to trot along. And I remember we were discussing on one show, and the guy was basically saying we're all in a frequency. It's like the radio channel, and we've come out of that one, and we can. It's like we're looking at these things, and we can see it black and white. It's like, why can't you say? And yet, when you say that to some people, whether it's the banks or all the things we've talked about, they just attack you as if you're a nut job, and it's just black and white to me. Like, and to yourself as well, we can see it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, it's the thing is as well is because you're not really indoctrinated the same as them. So that's their job, is then to attack you and try and ridicule you and to make you tone you down. And then it's literally, you know, like that, like Fishy Rishi, like this unelected prime minister that they've got in England. And he's went out like last week because you got this guy, George Galloway, who, you know, love him or hate him, I mean, he just talks complete sense and straight down the line, you know, and he tells it like it is. And, you know, he won some election, right? But he won it because people must have voted for him. And I don't know how that happened, because generally all the elections, in my view, are all already decided, right? So, and they fix it so that the right guy wins. But I think it's similar to how Trump got in 2016. They were like, how did that happen? Did we not buy enough votes? right? And I think this is what's happened again. But this guy, Galloway, he actually got more votes than Labour, Conservative, and the other party put together. So, you know, and anyway, this Sunak guy, completely unelected billionaire, right? That's like, you know, well, he's a multimillionaire, his wife's a billionaire. They've actually raped the coffers of this country to like fill their own family's banks, right? Everything that they're doing with all of these wars, because that's what their families' businesses are involved in. They're just getting richer and like they need more
And
money,
he
you know.
like, we won't mention the name, but he's connected to the Moderna one, like.
Exactly, exactly. You know, but he actually went out there and complained, and it was literally like the headmaster coming into the assembly at the beginning of school and saying, "You naughty boys, you naughty girls, fancy voting for him. That is wrong. Don't do it again." It really was like that. And he says, "We have to get rid of this extremism and all of this and all of that." I'm thinking, extremism? You know, anything that you don't agree with is extremism. Simple as that nowadays. But you know, it's just that's the craziness of it. And then we can see that all plain as day and laugh at it, and other people think that we're stupid. You know, but hey, you just got to get on with that. You know, that's part of the fun, isn't it? You know, letting them be their drones and carry on. But talking about like the actual education system as well, definitely in the UK only, all right? Everybody thinks it is the law that you have to put your kid in school. But in fact, the normal is you don't have to. Home education is the norm, and you only volunteer your child to go into school if you want to. But they make it sound as if to take your child away from school is the no-no. But in reality, you don't have to put your kid in school. So if you have time, right, I think our grandchild's going to be home educated from everything that we're looking at now. So that you don't have to put your child in school. You do not have to follow the curriculum, right? They all say, "Oh yeah, well we're gonna if you take them out, we're gonna inspect you and make sure you're teaching them correct." You don't have to follow it. You can teach them anything you like. So what you're going to teach them is reality, really. You know what's really going on. And yeah, you're going to have to add up. You're going to have to know your basic mathematics. Yes, you're going to have to read and write because that's how you'll get through life. You certainly don't need to know algebra, x, y, z equals p. What the hell does that mean? Right? And you don't need to learn how to write poetry unless you feel like kind of artistic and you want to, right? That's the reality of it. But they try to make it, and now there's people getting attacked now from these school teachers. Like, who the hell are you? Who do you think you are? Right? Because I'm going to educate my child like out of away from your claws, right? But it's absolutely 100% legal, right, in their world, not just lawful, legal for you to keep your kid away from school, teach them whatever you want, and there's nothing that they can do about it, right? As long as you stand your ground and use their rules, don't try and be like, "I am man, I'm going to be." I get that bit, 100% stand with it. But sometimes it's good to fight them and beat them over the head with their own stick. So use the legal side and use the legislation that's available that shuts them down straight away. Because, you know, if you want to do home education, it's actually should be home education before you send them to school. And there is all of the legislation points to you being free to educate your child at home in any way you want. There's going to be no drag queens involved. There's going to be no like he, she, they, it, whatever pronouns, you know. It's going to be normal, common sense education to make sure that they can be productive through life and be safe themselves.
Like my son, he's it copies the Finnish system, and they can decide whether they want to go into a class or not. And they have music there, they do all the languages and everything. Whereas they've taken that out. I had one guest on that was exposing the unions in the United States because the whole thing is corrupt, and I got a strike on my YouTube channel because of that. The other one was a Holocaust victim. She was 84, 85, talking about that. That gave me another strike. So like when they're taking down things like that, it's because you're touching a nerve. How could that? I mean, you can see it's the sickest thing on YouTube. You can see so much weird stuff, but yet they'll remove that. That alone just gives me confidence to go, hey, we're on the right track. So what I want to ask you, Peter, is like you're doing this for a while. We've had a lot of shows, and I thoroughly enjoyed. I love the way you explain things. Are you finding, because like what I've noticed is I will never go backwards. It's always kind of you're moving forward. It's not that easy. Like the reality is some people think, oh, you just do this and you're grand. No, there's a lot of research, and because you're basically, it's kind of, I suppose you're doing your own, you're becoming your own legal person as such, trying to understand this. How many people know in the last kind of, since the craziness happened, since the 20s, how many more people are getting on board? Because there's so many people that kind of they're just living in fear. They think, yeah, we're doomed. But the reality is there's more and more getting involved in this. And I mean, you're obviously, you're surrounded by, people that are following your system, and different people, like, yeah, Peter Stone, I know you're connected with him. He's been on my show. Like everybody is doing their thing. They all have their own little way. But how many people now are getting involved?
Yeah, well, I think there is a lot more people that are starting to like. I hate that word wake up, because like awake to me is like, when you've lost your friend, you're going for some whiskey, and then that's going to be it. That's awake. But certainly becoming aware. That's what I like. I like the term aware. So you like think, oh, okay, we're becoming more aware of what's going on. But it's, you see now, obviously, even 30 odd years ago, right, when I met my wife Janine, I was saying, so you do get it, like we're on a prison planet, and like we were all put here, and there's other things that are in charge, and she's like, but
And she still married you, did she?
yeah, yeah, but and but now, since like what you said, the craziness like really kicked in. It was like they took the brakes off. Like, look, I'm sick of pretending. Let's stop pretending. Let's just go and tell them we're going to kill them all. And like, so that obviously made a lot of other people jump back and go, hang on, which they'd just been coasting through life before. Just, oh, look, I'm busy. I need to get past it. I've got a job. I've got to, you know what I mean? I've just got to like to get me shopping in. So they ignore the signs. But that woke a lot of people up. But then other things have started to happen now. If you're looking, you're probably not even allowed to talk about things. But like the harm that's been done to people now, and they're actually getting exposed now. That's starting to make a lot of other people that have already done it. It's too late. But now they're going, oh shit, right? And then waking up to other things and thinking, okay, that doesn't sound very right
And
either.
just on that, both the Canadian Prime Minister and the Australian one, where they were pushing it and insisting on it, and also the WHO, all have now said, no, we never said that was your own choice. I mean, if that doesn't infuriate you and make you want to just run in the opposite direction and realize we've been duped, like,
Yeah.
and they're allowed just come out and say that, and you're going, no, 100% you were destroying people because of that.
Yeah, exactly. But these things I think like are set to sort of like make people go, wow, hang on a second. And then I can't remember, a few weeks ago they actually did an announcement on the television. No, I don't watch television, but people always send me clips, so I get to see whatever I want
You
anyway.
see the best
You
stuff.
know, exactly. So when any disasters coming, they tell me, no, get worried. Oh, okay, cheers, like thank you for that. We're all gonna die. Okay, thank you. But then it says like some guy come up, Saunders, I think, because I was taking a mick out of him on a post. I was like, oh, the guy from KFC now, he's like some general, he wants you all to go and get die in Russia, because they actually said we're going to conscript everyone from 18 to 60. 18 to 60, like it's like, oh, ridiculous. So, but there was tons and tons of like posts. These people had done nothing their entire life, and now they're making posts about how dare they, this is wrong, there's something wrong in the country, there's something wrong with this. And you think, well, there you go. Sometimes it has to land on their doorstep and worry them or scare them or lose them their fiat currency to make them go, hang on, something's not right here. So now look at the farmers. Now, I mean, it's right across Europe, isn't it? Right? But do you ever see anything on the mainstream media, or I call it the lamestream media? Right? Not a single report. I mean, look what they've done all over in Holland, in Belgium, in France, in Germany now as well. And you see the police attacking the farmers in Germany, but even in the UK, right? Fair enough, they're still doing it the UK version as like, well, let's go and stand in the road for a little bit. But at least they're pushing hard, right? I think they should start, let's go and have a look and start dealing like the French. and go and spray the Houses of Parliament with cow shit. That's what we
Yeah,
should be doing,
exactly.
right?
And the
But you
police
know,
that were blocking them going down the road, that they were spraying them as well. That was nice to
yeah,
see.
yeah, exactly. That's what they should be doing, like dumping it all on them. You know, I mean, who wants to get covered in liquid manure? You know, but this is now they need to step it up, because I don't think people actually fully get the picture of, like, hang on. So in Wales, they are doing literally what Klaus Schwab says they should do. They should get rid of the cattle, they should get rid of the sheep, they should actually turn the fields over to grow trees. Well, carbon is carbon, is it not? So, like, yes, a tree needs carbon, so it'll suck the carbon in, but so does the grass, so does the actual crops. Anything that is planted will bring carbon out of the air. That's why we need carbon, by the way. So we can't get rid of it, we need it, right? So, like, to say, oh, we need carbon zero, we need to, oh, where's your carbon footprint? You know, the only footprint I want to give is the one with a boot going up your backside. But you know, it's absolutely
And I'm
ridiculous.
seeing all the electric cars now towing a transformer on the back, and it's like, and you see them in the US where they're just all queuing up to get charged. I mean, that's not something that's like a petrol station where you fill up in 2-3 minutes. You're probably like 2 hours, if not more, for some of them. And
But like here,
people are falling for it. Like, and most of the chargers were actually done by diesel. So it's
oh no,
like,
I've seen it.
and
Yeah, I've
people
seen
are
it.
just like, and plus they're so dangerous. Like, you see when they go on fire, like sometimes there's like 20 explosions. And I don't know, it's like, but I don't know. I think people are becoming aware of that, because you see people selling their Teslas after 3 months and stuff like that. They're kind of realizing I was duped. And I think
Yeah,
when somebody gets duped like that, they become more aware, as you say, instead of awake. They kind of go, "Hey, why was I pushed down this road when it was a dead end?"
yeah, exactly. And if a bright thing, a good thing is that you're seeing the actual sale of all these electric vehicles are dropping now, dropping terribly. And when it comes to the auctions, if you've ever seen, well, in the UK, the auctions, they can't sell any of them. They just can't sell them. Brand new cars that they were charging like 30 grand for, and they can't sell them for five. They just won't sell because, oh, I'm not buying that. I'm going to sit on a bomb ready to blow me to death, you know.
And the thing
And
as well is, more a lot don't know, but sometimes the battery is nearly half the price of the car. And like, you can get some cars that last for 20 years. And even if it doesn't, the resale value is fairly decent. But would you buy a 5-year-old electric vehicle? Because one, you don't know how the person done it. Because it's like, sometimes I remember, like, my dad was big into electronics, and he was always, when you buy something new, make sure you charge it fully, then let it go down and charge it up. And he had a system that worked. And everyone has their own way of charging things. Some people just keep charging it at night. And are they actually destroying the battery? So you could be buying something thinking you're getting good value, and within a year you have to replace the battery, which is cheaper to buy a new car.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like here, fair enough. We live in a little village, and it's not as like I can't remember now. There's maybe 2,000 people like in the whole village. There's only one electric charging point in the whole village. Only one. So you know, I mean, I know you can do it at home, and you can get these conversion kits or whatever, but that's it. So I mean, if everyone bought one, so they'll be queuing up along down by the beach down there, like all waiting for hours and hours and hours, waiting for your turn to get in. And that's it. One point in the whole village. It's just, and if that doesn't actually make people go, hang on, does that not seem stupid? You know, how clever is the government if they say we all need electric vehicles, but they're only going to let you charge it up in one place? You know, they're actually, to me, it's like they're laughing at you, right? Waiting for you to actually realize what's going on. And it's like, well, I never thought you'd realize. I thought I'd need to go and do even more and be even worse to you to actually make you actually start questioning things. It's crazy.
I was wondering, like, is there ways of getting a statistic to see the people that got the poison dart that actually have an electric vehicle that are falling for this climate change thing? It's probably a high percentage of the same people, because once they're fooled once, they just keep doing it, and they just keep lying to them the whole way through.
Yeah, but I see again, I've seen someone had wrote up, it's easier to fool someone than it is to actually convince them they've been fooled. So once they've actually swallowed the actual hook, line, and sinker, they don't want to give it back. You know, and a lot of it you've got to remember is now is the media, right? The lamestream media right? And I never watch any of it, but like I get given the clips, and some of them are just so good to actually take the mick out of, right? And we had the Welsh minister. This is like some woman, and she was something to do with like farming, and she actually said this, and it was a little clip, and they were interviewing her, similar to this actually. You know, what she wasn't. I don't think she was like in a big interview. It was just like similar to this, and she went, well, you know, I know it's hard on the farmers, right? But we're not going to force them to plant trees, but they're going to lose the land anyway, right? So it's kind of, I'm not going to force you to do that, but I'm just going to take it off you if you don't, right? So, but she was saying, but we've got to fight this total disaster that is climate change. It's like, oh, and I'm listening. She went, you know, I got stuck. I had to abandon my car in the snow. I'm thinking, hang on a second. Has it never snowed before in Wales? Like, is that the first time ever? It's like, you know, that's just the most ridiculous. She's trying to convince everyone, look, I mean, most of Wales is farms, let's put it that way, right? So she's going to close down nearly all of Wales because she got a car stuck in the snow. You know, it's like I was born in 1963 and I can't remember it, but I was told by my parents that it was the worst winter that they'd had for decades on either side of it. And it was like, you know, 6 foot of snow. They had to wade through everything to get me in and like back from the hospital. And, you know, so, you know, all those years ago, I'm not going to say how many, you can work it out, right? You would have got stuck in the snow, right? What a stupid woman. And she's actually in charge of, like, you know, like people in the government, and that's what she's convincing these people, like, oh, give up your entire life. Actually, we should all just go and commit suicide because it'll be much better for the planet. It's like, it's crazy. So
I
surely
mean,
that's got to like
yeah,
make
not,
other
like
people
they're
aware.
like talking about the cows and everything. And I mean, I was born in 72, and I remember there was times there was snow, there was times where you were going to school in your short pants, the sun was so hot, and then it changes. The cycles, it cycles the whole time. But then, if you look at Times Magazine, global warming, global cooling, then because they couldn't do that, it becomes climate change. But if you look at all these, like Sydney and the Statue of Liberty and a load of them, the water level is the exact same.
Yeah,
They have technology to make all these fires. They have technology to make all rain where there shouldn't be. They have technology to dry it up. They've that for over 100 years. I was shocked to see that. Like, they have weather manipulating technology for a long time. But that's what they're using then to brainwash people who then attack people and try to say, oh, you're like, even just the electric thing. Like, I mean, how is the mining of all the materials for that? Like, nobody seems to care that there's children in the Congo digging this, that they'll probably die a few years later because of all the chemicals. They don't care. Where's the energy coming to charge your electricity? Is it from the sun? You know, it's like even the solar panels, they can't be recycled. The wind turbines, they're just dumped in a big massive landfill. And the amount of metal and concrete that's needed for the frame of them, the whole
yeah.
thing is a joke. But yet people are like, ooh, and they just. But what I think the ego gets in the way, because as soon as people try to throw their thing, they can't debate it, and they just about turn and walk. Like, they get kind of defensive. But unfortunately, most people on the telly and everything, they're not having these conversations. They're not saying, okay, tell me, where's the energy coming from and everything. And they're just allowing these people, and now you've all these idiots gluing themselves to the ground and everything. It's like,
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. I know. It's like, you know, you're gluing yourself to the motorway or you're gluing yourself to a bus or something, you know. I think, well, fair enough. Just take off then. Right? Go on, get the train going 125 mile down the track. See how long the stake's stuck glued to it. You know, I mean, this is insanity.
like
Like
when I
in one
see
of the
that now,
towns.
what I when I saw that straight away, and I've never seen anybody having this debate. They all have the Visi vest. What material is that made from?
Yeah.
Most of them have runners. What material is that made from? They're all drinking their Starbucks with the plastic cup. Like, everything that they're so-called fighting, they don't even understand it themselves, eh?
Totally, absolutely. But I seen, unfortunately, it was like the elderly people, you know, probably like 70s and and they were actually putting up in towns around the UK their own barricades to stop people. And no one told them to do it. Wasn't even the council going, oh no, we should stop traffic. They were actually stopping it going down. And because I heard this woman, like someone was filming it, they got out of the car and saying, what the hell are you doing? You're going to make me late for work. You know, I've got to get to work. And went, oh, well, we don't want you going down there. We've got to try and like battle climate change. It's insanity. It's absolutely crazy. You know, I mean, like this planet that's here, you know, it's like I'm telling you, it's going to get rid of us well before we're going to do any harm to. I mean, I know they're terrible to the planet, right? But I mean, it's they'll do something and just get rid of all of us, boom, and we'll all be gone, and they'll have a natural disaster, we'll call it. You know, not like the one that they had. You seen, like, you know, what they did in Maui? Okay, they've actually done the similar to Texas now. So Texas has started arguing back, close the border, we're not doing what you do. And then mysteriously half of it goes on fire. Just a coincidence, so, you know, it's just one of them coincidences. So paint your house blue quickly.
Well, because I even went down that, and it's like they can do it with anyone. They're making it look like the blue is the one that's protected. They can change it to any color. So it's just like
Oh yeah, yeah.
there, were they told blue is safe and to have it blue? Perhaps, but I've heard of some places where they're all painting it blue, no, because they think that's a safe color, and the reality is they could just change it to green or whatever they want, and that's not going to protect you.
No, no, that, I get that completely as well. Yeah, yeah. But, you know, I'm just saying though, you know, I mean, in Chile, I don't know if you heard about that. In Chile, they basically frazzled it, you know, and then there was like videos of people painting, and there weren't houses. A lot of them were just shacks, you know,
Yeah.
metal shacks, corrugated steel, you know, and they're painting it blue, you know, to try and protect it. They just, whatever they want to do. And then they always say, it's always the same thing. Where did these fires come from? You know, it's like all of a sudden you're having like whole lines of fire. I mean, like, surely anybody with one brain cell can look at the videos of Maui and say, that's got to be the cleverest line of fire I've ever seen in my life. It can go straight down one straight line of houses and not even bother the trees, just 2 feet away. I mean, come on, you know?
And you probably like, because when I grew up, there was plenty of joyriding, and people then would burn out the cars. So I saw a lot of that. I've never saw it where the whole thing, everything was melting like you see it in Maui. Because there was even times where there was no trees around, a few cars in the car park, and it's just everything was melting, the aluminium, the whole lot.
Yeah, yeah,
And like, and then people think it's a natural disaster, like, and it's just brushed off, like.
yeah. It's funny enough. It's like two places just this year recently, just like one in a field behind me, and one down when I had to pass the street going to the shop. Two cars were set on fire. You know, obviously someone stole a car, dumped it in the field, and set it on fire. But then outside someone's house, I don't know why, what, but you know, it didn't melt. Even the one in the field that was left to burn all night on its own. So I mean, if anything was going to melt, it would be the one that's left alone to do whatever it wants to do. Yeah, it was burnt out completely. It was a mess and that, but it didn't melt. The wheels didn't melt. They were still there. You know, it's like, but how people just they've lost the ability to actually question, when our entire existence and life should be, we need to question everything, and, you know, don't believe anything, question it and find out for yourself what actually makes sense, instead of just sitting there going, oh, well, the teacher told me so, so it must be right. The news told me so, so it must be right.
Or you say science says, or they say. And I remember it was like my folks as well, they were always, who's they? Because a lot of people use the cop out. Oh, they say this is this, and that's their kind of reasoning to get out of something. And you just have to take off the layer. Science says, okay, which science manual? Who actually paid for this? The journal, because they're all bought, like, and like
Yeah.
science changes because, oh, we found out new information. It's like, no, it's like they've been bought. And once you can see through that, that's how we make change. And I think the only way we can do it is at ground level. So what you're doing, helping people get out of the debts, and there's all little layers to that, they stop having control, because at the end of the day, it's all about controlling people, causing depression, causing, like, when people go through this, because obviously you've witnessed a lot of it, like the whole family, there's marriages break up, the kids are destroyed, they see, like, like their parents can't take them, not only to the cinema, they can barely feed them. And that's okay. They allow that. Yet they'll bring in all these military men, give them the best of treatment, give them, the best of food and everything. And you're going, what? Or even like the pensions. Like I was seeing, I saw that as well. The pensions in the UK is so small. And then they're bringing in people, and it's like they're getting 3 times as much. So somebody
Yeah.
that's worked all their life, and now they're choosing between putting food on the table or keeping themselves warm, and somebody that has never contributed to the country just comes in and they get 10 times better. and
Yeah.
we're supposed to accept that as being normal.
Exactly, and now they're actually taking houses now in the UK and actually putting them into the houses. So these landlords are getting offered great deals. Right, don't worry, we'll do all the maintenance. Don't worry, you've got 3 years of renting, and they're taking them all. So it's making the rental market for normal people trying to go and rent a house somewhere or flat or whatever really difficult because they can't get them because they've been taken away to give to these immigrants that are landing on the boats or wherever they're coming from, and again, the same thing. If you look at them and they're all saying, oh, they're refugees from a war. So, well, where's the women then?
Like if it was a woman and their house was bombed, came with her children, and you could tell that they were traumatized, you'd open your own door from. But it's all military men with the best of the best of phones and everything. There's no
Yeah,
kids, there's no women, and that's happening in the States. It's happening in Ireland. It's happening in England. It's scary, and people
everywhere.
should realize because what it looks like for this is when they decide to say attack, take out these people, their own military, the local police and the local military aren't going to turn on their own because they have so many friends, relatives, and everything. But the outsiders will do what they're told. And there's so many of them there, they can take out a city fast.
Yeah.
And people should realize, like, there is some people sticking up to this. They're blocking them coming in. But unfortunately, I mean, I know that myself. When you try to even stop 5G or something like that, like everybody will complain. You say, all right, let's all get together. We can gather some momentum and then we all get 3 people each. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's start. And crickets, they just disappear. So once you get the right people, you can stop anything. And I think we have to do it at ground level in local areas. Start taking over the little, the schools not having the, as you say, the drag queens and everything. I mean, did you ever see the drag queens going to the old folks' homes? Because they're the ones that are bored. They need some entertainment. Like I've never seen videos of drag queens going there.
Yeah, exactly. Just sort of trying to influence them. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous from start to finish, isn't it? On the pronoun stuff, and why on earth they have to teach children like to decide, oh well, you have to go, and they're actually trying to get them to make a decision on what sex they are. Well, they know what they are. It was like I seen this little joke somebody had printed up and put out like on, I can't remember what was on, and it says like, three little kids sitting outside the principal's office, and they went, I'm here because I said the F word. So I'm here because I said the C word. Says I'm here because I said that person with a penis was male. And that's how ridiculous it is now. It's like, but even you see again the clips that I get sent, and they're actually point blank asking ministers, well, do you agree that that's a woman? And they'll not give an answer because they're terrified, because they know if they'll lose all the money. And that's all it is. They're all controlled by money. Right? They'll lose all the backing, they'll lose all the support, they'll lose all the money, and they'll be gone. And that's it. So, and once they've took that 30 pieces of silver, once they've shown themselves to be as weak as Judas, then they are never getting out of it. And if they step out of line one time, then they're going to have a heart attack or a car crash, or they'll get sent up in a helicopter. And we know what happens when you go up in them, So it's, and it's just complete control. Everything like that is just massive control. Like I said, we're on a prison planet, whatever shape you want to call it, and they're all looking down from above, controlling everything. And that's how they invented this legal fiction, to make this fictional world that we all exist in. So it is an illusion, as in it's fictional, with your legal fiction and your legal fiction title that actually owns everything, where it states on your birth certificate, this is not proof of ID. Really? When it says that I was born, right? And then when you get your V5 or your whatever document you get in your country to say that, oh, I've just bought a car, and you actually get, and it says on there, this is not proof of ownership. So how do I prove I own it then? But it's definitely proof that you can pay a fine and pay any car tax due. That's all it's for. So don't worry about it.
No, the whole thing, and I mean, like Peter, we definitely have to get you back next month, and because there's so many different angles we can go down. But one of the things that I went through recently was like, because I'm 51 now, but when you hit 50, you can get your pension, and it was like I had to have a bank, a proof of address or a utility bill, and I don't because I rent. Since I lost everything, I'm kind of cautious, and it's like I can have a passport, I can have a driving license, and that won't do, but when you have a utility bill, they accept that as proof of address. And I spent money. Eventually, they just gave up because there was no way I was doing this. But it just shows the stupidity that goes on in the world. That, like, how do you actually open a utility? Like, you go down with your passport or something just to prove who you are. And yet they rate that over your passport. And that's going on all over the world. That's not just an Irish thing. Like, and so yeah, the insanity. And like the same thing is like you have to get a birth certificate to get a passport and all these different things to give it to another department. So you've just spent money and a lot of time and a pain in the arse to waste to get from one department to give to the other that they already have it. And it's like people just do it. And it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our life? Is precious. Every minute is precious. Yet we're all like we're slaves, but not only are we slaves, they make us busy fools as well at the same time.
Exactly, yeah, busy slaves, so keep them occupied, which is the same thing, which is like, bread and circus. So it's coming from like the Roman Empire, it's just like, well, if they're going to step out of line, put them all into the Colosseum, make a few people go kill each other, and and get them all drunk, give them free food and free wine, or very cheap food and very cheap wine. And the shapes of the Colosseum, where they used to put them all and have the gladiators doing whatever they did with each other, or with animals, or with Christians, maybe, I don't know. But it's just fair enough now. It's just sports, but it's the same thing. I mean, I like sport. I was like a professional fighter for many years, and it's like that was my entire adult life. Nearly was that. But like I was doing it because that's what I loved to be doing. But I still knew outside of that realm that everything was weird, right? I wouldn't allow myself to get sucked into it so far that I would be like ignore everything else, and not realize that we're actually living in a whole prison that's just like somebody's removed the bars and actually put bits of paper in the way instead. Like you say, right? Well, if you haven't got that piece of paper, right, when you're not going to be able to get a bank account, and if you haven't got the other piece of paper, you're not going to be able to go and get a car, which is why I've been trying to help more and more people understand, or at least comprehend, decentralized finance, and to try and move away from the fiat currency to use more on like these decentralized currencies. And by no way am I any good at it, or like an expert at it, but I'm trying to learn fast, because when they move it over, and they will, going into these CBDCs, I mean, that's kind of like the final click to actually control everything you do, unless you learn how to be decentralized and create your own bank outside of that system.
Absolutely. So listen, thoroughly enjoyed it as always, and I look forward to getting you back again. You might let people know, Peter, where they can find you.
Well, best way is like go claimyourstrawman.com. If you go onto that one, and then I've got the on there, I've got join the actual mailing list, because they're always trying to get rid of me. They're always trying to get rid of you. So, but if you've got your mailing list, we can always send out them. Saying that, they've stopped me mailing people now as well. I've got to do another load of
there's a
stuff
lot of
like
people,
that.
they even block that. They mark it as spam because they know what you're doing is it goes against the norm.
Yeah,
So people
yeah.
don't see it. And you just think, maybe people aren't liking what I'm doing. But it's unfortunately they're either not getting it, or two, they're putting it in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, get onto the mailing list, like claimyourstrawman.com, or if you don't want, I've got another program which we call Checkmate the Matrix, right, which I thought was very catchy. So we got that on, it's called school.com, SKOOL, school.com, which is just like a platform. So on our Checkmate the Matrix, it's got loads of column classrooms. So I've got all my information in different classrooms, going from the debt thing, going on to private trusts, going on to the cryptocurrency side, but also it's its own little social media, but private social media, so only our private members can talk to each other. So that's really good. It's like a community in there, private group. So have a look at that if you want to as well. So it's really good to like help talk and be involved with like-minded individuals.
Make sure I'll put all the links both on the audio and the video. And you must check out my the cryptopodcast.org, because it was basically, I set it up to kind of make it simplified, because most of the books that I read first were confusing, and now I get on people and understand the NFTs and the different ways of using wallets and exchanges. So Yeah, because I agree with you. I think I keep telling people they're going to just turn off the tap and your money's disappeared. And it's like, who do you run to? They say, oh, you're insured for 100,000 or 50,000, depending on the country. Yeah, good luck getting that. Like, so yeah, I'll make sure I put all the links. And listen, I know there's a load of topics we can go in. So we definitely get you back and we go deeper on a few of them. So thank you very much, Peter.
Oh no, it's always great to come on. I always enjoy myself. Thank you very much.
No problem. So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Until next week, take care. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with your friends. And you'll find all my shows with the QR code or bio.link/podcaster, as well as my podcast coaching. And I'd like to thank my sponsor, DanielPacker.com, helping people with anxiety, stress, and addictions. He's got a 90% success rate, and you only pay if you're successful. Also, if you'd like to go on a podcasting tour, I can help you do that. And if you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact me on my bio.link/podcaster. Until next week, take care.